Hey, what's up guys? Scott here from Icon Vehicle Dynamics, and we're out in the shop again today playing with this 2025 6th Gen 4Runner. And this is not the first time we've worked on this truck. This truck is actually the NYTOP 4Runner, and they've been kind enough to let us use this periodically over the last several months, trying out different versions of the suspension system. NYTOP makes some pretty cool stuff. You've got these carbon fiber fender flares, pretty sweet titanium exhaust, and some other goodies bolted on the truck. But we wanted to show you what we've got going on suspension-wise. And this has changed several times through its lifetime here. I've tried out pretty much every stage of the new upcoming 4Runner suspension systems. And now what we've settled on is pretty much a rolling display of what is possible with all bolt-on parts here. So let's go into the details, show you what's on the truck, and talk a little bit more about it. So up front, the thing you may notice first, and the elephant in the room, are these 3.0 series front coilovers with CDEV. 3.0s, you say? Why have we never offered that on a 4Runner before? Well, actually, it's because they didn't really fit all that great on the previous gens. In order to blow the body diameter out, you also have to have a larger diameter coil. And if you ever noticed or done an install on our suspension systems, at full droop on the previous generation, there was pretty much no daylight left between the UCAs and the coil springs. So putting on a larger one is going to cause all kinds of contact problems, and we have to limit travel. So ultimately, we decided that having the additional travel is more worthwhile than having a larger diameter shock. But on the new platforms like the 6th Gen 4Runner, the new Tacoma, new Land Cruiser, and so on, there's a lot more room to play with. And with some specially designed upper control arms that allow for extra clearance, we're able to fit that bigger coilover and maintain the full travel. So what you see here is a 3-inch diameter coilover with the full suspension travel offered as a 2.5. There's very little room left to spare, but again, they've designed the arms to basically mold around that coil spring and stay out of the way. So why a 3-inch diameter coilover, you may ask? Well, just like so many other things, bigger is always better when it comes to shock absorbers. Having a larger diameter piston allows us to generate more force. You also have more valving options because you have more shim sizes to choose from. You can get the tune dialed in much more specifically than you could with a smaller shock. And also, just like all of our other 3.0 coilovers, this coilover is actually broken up into multiple zones. So you have your primary ride zone throughout the majority of the travel. And up at the top of the cylinder, you have a dual stage bump zone, which utilizes a secondary, smaller diameter piston. Through a majority of the shock travel, that second piston is just kind of hanging out and flowing through oil and not sealed up inside a cylinder. But as we're approaching full bump, it nests up inside that bump cup, and you get an exponential ramp up in both compression and rebound force, helping control those hard bottom outs and the rebound off of them. Then at full extension, we have a droop zone, which helps absorb the somewhat jarring and sometimes loud full extension force as those metal on metal components slam together, and that hydraulic top out will take out a lot of that harshness and smooth out the whole process. In addition to having the bigger diameter piston, having a larger shock body means more oil, and more oil means you can work the shocks harder before heat becomes a problem. After all, a shock's basic job is to convert that kinetic energy of the suspension and the chassis moving into heat and absorb that energy by converting it into heat and bleeding it back out into the atmosphere. So a bigger shock is going to allow you to work the shocks harder before having to worry about shock fade or overheating anything, cooking your seals or anything like that, allowing you to keep your foot on the throttle and moving quick over the rough stuff. Another part of all that wheel travel that we've been talking about is the front differential drop, which this 4Runner also has installed. So this gives Icon an exclusive as the most wheel travel on the market for a front suspension system on these new Toyotas. That differential drops paired with that shock link, making sure that the suspension cycles fully, but also that your CV angles are well within their limits, not overextending or potentially pulling apart a CV axle, which is always going to cause a bad day. These 3.0 coilovers are going to be offered in multiple different configurations with both your CDC valve, your CDXS valve, and as you see here, the CDE valve, which is the electronic and active compression damping adjustment. No matter which flavor suits your preference, all of these coilovers are going to ride the same, but have different ability for you to dial in the way that they work and the way that they ride for whatever situation you may find yourself in. The CDE valve specifically will allow you to adjust that compression damping from inside the cab. No more getting out, turning knobs. You can quickly access it all right on your iOS device. And it will actively change those shock settings on the fly based around your settings and some algorithms and sensor inputs, basically controlling the suspension much better and having the shock able to change that damping more appropriate situation. It'll basically allow you to run a much more compliant and softer shock setting, which is going to ride better over smoother surfaces or just smaller terrain in general, where you don't really need a lot of shock. But the moment you need that shock, it's going to ramp up, add a lot more compression damping to absorb that next bump or hole, and then go right back to your previous setting once that G event has subsided. Also on the front of this 4Runner, and the first of its kind, is a bolt-on 2-inch diameter hydraulic bump stop. The 4Runner is kind of unique in that there are hard points on the frame that allows a nice, easy bolt-on install of a bump stop without having to have any welding or anything else that's required on pretty much every other front-end platform. So this guy bolts in place right behind here and all in the CNC laser cut bracketry. That bump stop is going to help absorb the bottom outs much better than just the shock itself, and without transferring any of that energy back into the suspension like a traditional foam or rubber bump stop would. Basically, it's going to soak up that energy, and then as the lower control arm falls away, the bump stop is going to re-extend more slowly just under its own pressure and keep all that energy inside the shock. Eliminates a lot of that bounce or bucking off of a hard bottom out that you may be more used to with a foam or rubber bump stop. Controlling all this wheel travel and making sure your wheel alignment is going to stay in spec are a set of adjustable billet aluminum upper control arms featuring the Delta Joint Pro. The Delta Joint Pro is the central part of the equation that allows us to extract this much wheel travel out of the front end of the truck. It's also fully serviceable and rebuildable while the upper arm is still bolted to the vehicle, making maintenance a breeze and ensuring a long service life out of that ball joint. The adjustability of the upper arm allows you to fine-tune your caster and camber alignment in conjunction with the factory cams off of the lower control arm, and allow you to dial in a very specific set of alignment angles, which can be beneficial for certain handling characteristics or just solving a funky tire rub issue. You can actually shove that tire farther forward within the wheel well, freeing up space away from, say, the body mount back here in the rear of the fender, allowing a larger tire to fit, but also while maintaining proper alignment angles, ensuring the truck's going to drive nice and straight. With all that being said, let's head on out to the back of the truck and see what we've got going on back there. In the rear of the truck, we've got a lot of good stuff going on that's going to complement the front end really well. So the first thing you notice are the big 3-inch diameter remote reservoir rear shocks with CDEV, and these are going to balance the tuning with the front as well as allow for that active on-the-fly compression damping adjustment. And much like the front, the rear shocks are going to allow for better heat capacity, being a larger diameter than the standard 2.5s we install on many of these 4Runners. That larger piston is going to also allow for a lot more shock damping ability than a 2.5 would provide you. The rear shocks, however, do not include that integrated bump zone as the front coilovers do, and that's because we need the whole shock body for that travel. We didn't want to sacrifice any of the total wheel travel to add in that bump zone, so we're going to tackle that separately with a set of hydraulic bump stops that will be released here real soon. Holding up the rear of this 4Runner is a set of triple rate rear coil springs, and these feature 3 specific spring rates: a softer than stock ride rate, which is going to give you nice compliant ride quality over smooth terrain, but a more aggressive bump rate. Basically, as you get into that compression travel, the spring rate is going to ramp up, providing more bottom out resistance and better handling and control. But then on the opposite end of the spectrum, at full droop, you get into the droop rate, which is even softer than the ride rate. That really soft droop rate is going to allow the suspension to just skip over the inconsistent terrain without putting a bunch of energy back into the chassis that could potentially further upset it. These coil springs are going to give you a couple of inches of rear lift, which is going to put you in the perfect spot with the lift height range that is adjustable through the front coilovers, allowing you to dial in a nice and level stance if you so desire. Helping control the suspension even further are a set of billet aluminum adjustable lower links here out back. And these are going to allow you to fine-tune your pinion angle adjustment, especially when paired with the adjustable upper links. As ride height changes, there becomes different times when you may want to or need to adjust your pinion angle to keep vibration and everything at a minimum. These links are going to allow you to do that while they're installed on the vehicle. No more removing, adjusting links, and then reinstalling. This can be done with just a simple turn of a wrench and everything bolted onto the truck. In addition to that pinion angle adjustment, these are going to allow for much more articulation than the factory links will. The factory links utilize a bonded rubber style bushing on either end, which has limited deflection capacity. It's only going to flex so far and then transfer all that energy into the link, which could potentially cause some damage or even in a worst case scenario, some failure. So the dual durometer bushing on the axle side, as well as the large JM16 Heim joint up on the frame side, is going to allow the suspension to basically get out of its own way. Pivot, flex, articulate, much better than the stock ones would, as well as giving you that strength increase for the durability and reliability that you're expecting from an off-road rig. Still yet to be installed on the back of this is an adjustable rear track bar. Whenever you're changing ride height in the back of these, you're gonna need a longer track bar or some sort of track bar bracket. Here at Icon, we prefer the adjustable track bar method. This solves multiple problems with one part. You get the axle recentered with your new ride height, as well as removing the factory bushings from the track bar. These bushings are going to restrict articulation and movement, much like the bushings in the factory upper and lower links do. And having a harder mount with the rod ends that we include in the Icon unit, it allows for better handling response, and just the truck feels better to drive overall. Another first of its kind on this 4Runner are a set of billet aluminum sway bar links for the rear. We've got them coming for the front too. By replacing the rubber bushings in the factory links with spherical bearings, you get a much more rigid joint with less deflection under load, which is going to give you a lot better handling characteristics and overall just a better feel of suspension. In addition, their larger diameter and billet aluminum construction is going to be a lot stronger than the spindly little factory units. So when you really do get the 4Runner twisted up in the rocks, you don't have to worry about any sort of sway bar link failure. And here she is, the 2025 NYTOP Toyota 4Runner. This is the very first 4Runner sitting on 3-inch diameter coilovers and rear shocks from Icon. And we're super excited about it. This thing's got all the bells and whistles, billet control arms, the CDEV with the IIC for the active shock adjustment, and basically has everything that we could possibly fit underneath a 4Runner, and it's ready to go eat some whoops. We are far from done with this new 4Runner platform, so make sure you head on over to iconvehicledynamics.com, click like and subscribe below to follow along for everything else we've got planned. We'll see you next time.